Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is where we grab the stack of sources you've sent us, articles, internal research, behavioral studies, and really just distill it all down to pure, usable knowledge.
And today, we are going deep on a topic that's just foundational, the neuroscience of influence.
It really is. We're looking at a body of work that completely redefines how we think about feedback.
It moves the whole concept from something sort of administrative or subjective.
Like giving advice.
Exactly. To something primal, something the human brain processes as, and this is the key, a literal survival signal.
And your mission for this dive is, well, it's critical. It's to quickly and thoroughly get the core difference between traditional instruction, telling someone what to do, and feedback that's actually neuroscientifically effective.
And that difference, as we're going to show you, is the invisible engine. It's what drives alignment, deep learning, and self-regulation in anyone.
Yeah, the sources are just so adamant about this. Feedback is not correction. It's not criticism. Okay. And it is absolutely not your opinion.
It's a precise, invisible signal. It operates deep inside the nervous system to create a really profound and lasting change.
So that's our starting line then.
That's it. The core finding is this. Feedback, when it's delivered properly, is just pure information. And it's information the brain can't help but interpret as data for its own survival.
It triggers an immediate reaction.
An immediate neurological reaction. Because the brain is ancient, it's wired to ask this one non-negotiable question of any social information it gets.
What does this mean for me?
Pretty much. What does this mean for my status, my safety, my position in the world?
Okay, so to really get this, we need to understand the mechanism. We'll explore that neurological response, the reward and threat systems.
And the huge difference between just following rules versus internalizing an identity. And then finally, a really practical part. How to deliver the signal to unlock that powerful, silent mechanism of self-correction.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with that fundamental negation, because if you miss this, you miss the whole point.
Right.
The source material is so clear. Feedback is not advice, correction, or opinion. Why is that so vital?
Because advice is optional. It's as simple as that. If you offer me advice, my prefrontal cortex, my rational, kind of lazy, energy-saving brain can just decide.
I listen to this or not.
Exactly. Process it or discard it. There are no immediate emotional stakes. It feels like a suggestion.
But effective feedback, that's totally different. It's pure, highly personalized information. It's a survival signal related to your status.
And the behavioral difference is immediate. It's instantaneous. People ignore instructions all the time because they feel external, optional.
But they react instantly, almost automatically, to feedback because it feels existential.
Personal, non-negotiable.
So what's actually happening inside the brain? What's firing when that signal lands?
Okay, so you see this simultaneous activation across three really critical systems. They're all intertwined. You've got the reward system, the threat system, and crucially, the social belonging system.
All of them light up at once.
All at once, because the information carries this huge social weight. If the feedback suggests you've improved your status or inclusion, boom, the reward system drives your attention.
And if it signals a drop in competence or potential exclusion,
then the threat system fires up. But here's the common denominator in both cases. Dopamine. Dopamine rises dramatically, and not because the feedback inherently feels good or bad, but because it signifies meaning. This information is important. It matters to my social standing.
So the brain is basically saying, I don't care if this is pleasant or unpleasant, I must process this because it impacts my ability to thrive.
That's it, precisely. Importance creates attention. If the brain decides something is crucial for navigating its social environment, for survival, it prioritizes that signal above almost everything else.
Which is why the sources say the brain doesn't process feedback as just words.
No, not at all. It processes it as status data. It's this constant subconscious monitoring of where we stand relative to the group. And that automatic ancient wiring is why this signal, it just can't be ignored.
Status data. That is a phenomenal reframing. It really is. But let's make that concrete. In an office, what's the real difference between a rule and status data?
Okay, good question. Think about the difference between, say, a technical note and what feels like a personal judgment. A rule is, use the new expense reporting system.
Right, that's external compliance. Just do it.
Exactly. But status data is, a mentor pulls you aside after a big presentation and quietly says, when you stumbled over those budget numbers, the client's face immediately tightened.
Oh.
Yeah. The mentor didn't say you are incompetent. They provided immediate, factual status data. And that translates in your ancient brain to, warning, your lack of preparation just jeopardized our standing with the tribe.
The tribe being the client?
The client, whoever. It's that perceived danger, that drop in status that you react to, not the stumble itself.
And that concept, status data, that drives us right into the next critical distinction, which is how we use that data for actual internal transformation,
Right.
not just, compliance. So let's draw this out. A rule tells you what to do. Run that report, hit your quarterly goals.
Mm-hmm.
But effective feedback tells you who you are becoming. Are you dependable? Are you skilled? Are you someone we can count on when things get tough?
And that subtle shift from action to identity, that is where the evolutionary wiring really, really shines. It explains the profound strength of this signal.
So what's the evolutionary context here?
Well, historically, and this is still completely true today, the biggest threat to your survival wasn't a predator. It was social exclusion.
Being kicked out of the group.
Being kicked out of the tribe. Approval meant safety, resources, protection, mating opportunities. Disapproval meant danger, isolation, and, well, near certain death.
Wow.
So this ancient programming means that when your modern brain gets that status data, especially if it's negative, it registers it with the intensity of an existential threat.
So even though the threat is maybe just a passive-aggressive email,
Right.
the brain processes it like the feeling of being cold, hungry, and alone outside the cave entrance.
Yeah.
It's that serious. And because the brain is still running this ancient, highly efficient operating system, the result of strategic, timely feedback is that the system just adjusts automatically.
Yeah, the source material had this beautiful line. It said, effective feedback results in no resistance, no debate, just alignment.
Just alignment. The survival instinct takes over, and it dictates the path toward correcting that negative status signal.
And that's the game changer. I mean, if the brain aligns automatically because of its own wiring, then influence stops being something you have to push onto
It
someone.
becomes something internal. It shifts the entire dynamic of ownership.
This is the moment, right?
Yeah.
This is when passive listeners become active participants. The genius of this is that people genuinely feel they chose the change themselves.
They feel the insight is their own discovery.
Even though the direction was already set by that little piece of status data. This is where we get to the concept of self-regulation. Think about that mentor analogy from the research. If a student gets these short, incredibly precise daily bits of feedback, no lectures, no pressure, just quiet status data, what happens?
That student starts to self-correct. They stop waiting for instruction. They become inherently flexible because their status data is constantly being updated. They're regulating themselves based on that invisible signal.
They're becoming their own internal boss.
Exactly. And this self-regulation happens because feedback creates a very specific kind of cognitive challenge. Mental tension.
Okay, mental tension.
When feedback exposes a gap, a misalignment between your current status, I messed up the data, and your desired status, I am a competent analyst, the brain registers this as an unfinished loop.
An unfinished loop, I like that.
Our brains are biologically wired to hate unfinished loops. If you've ever had a song stuck in your head or started an email and closed the draft, only to feel this pull to reopen it,
What?
you understand this tension. The brain has to expend energy to maintain that unresolved gap, and it wants resolution to conserve energy.
It's like a neurological cliffhanger. You have to know how it ends.
You do, and this tension, this cognitive dissonance, that is the true engine of change. It causes the mind to keep returning to that discrepancy until it's resolved. That internal tension drives action, not force, not pressure. You've given them the gap, now their own wiring forces them to close it.
But wait a minute. If we're strategically creating this mental tension and we're using status data that taps into threat and belonging systems, aren't we just creating a ton of stress or even burnout?
That is the most important practical question. It really is.
How do you manage that tension so it leads to productive action and not just, paralysis?
The difference is clarity and precision. Strategic feedback is not designed to create maximum anxiety. It's designed to create maximum clarity.
Okay.
So when feedback is vague, like you need to be more proactive, the brain doesn't know what to fix. The tension just grows into this generalized anxiety, a feeling that your status is permanently shaky.
Right. There's no clear path to fix it.
None. But when the feedback is precise status data, the report was 1 hour late, which means the client missed their internal deadline. The loop is clearly defined. The brain knows exactly what needs resolution.
Better time management or communication?
Something concrete. This localized, defined tension is the fuel for constructive change, not generalized stress.
That makes perfect sense.
Okay.
So we have the mechanism, mental tension driven by precise status data. Now, let's talk delivery. How do we make sure that signal is received clearly, quietly, and effectively? The sources are really big on this. Strategic feedback must be quiet, precise, and timely. Not public, not during a big review. Why is quiet so important?
Because the goal is to shift ownership of the problem, from external pressure to internal desire. If you deliver feedback loudly or aggressively, you activate conscious defenses, the fight-or-flight response.
So the person just focuses on defending themselves.
Defending their status, yeah, not analyzing the data. But when you deliver it quietly, a 15-second precise observation, one-on-one, right after the event, it's designed to land emotionally, then disappear.
I love that phrase. Land emotionally, then disappear.
It deposits the status data directly into their system. It leaves their brain to do the hard work of resolution and self-correction without the distraction of arguing with you. The less loud you are on the outside, the more powerful the internal process becomes.
And when this whole thing, the precise data, the managed attention, the quiet delivery, when it's all executed correctly, that's when we hit the deepest level of influence.
Identity integration.
Identity integration.
That's the ultimate outcome. The change becomes fundamental because people don't just change what they do. They change how they see themselves. If the repeated precise status data keeps affirming, for example, you are a dependable, detail-oriented leader.
That behavior gets fused with their self-concept.
Exactly. They stop doing it to please you. They do it because that is who they are.
Wow.
And this brings us to a crucial multiplier effect from the research: storytelling.
Storytelling. Okay.
Adding a brief, memorable story to feedback turns direction into experience. Stories are the most ancient vehicle for transmitting status. It's how we learned tribal norms.
Can you give us a quick example of that? How does a story actually enhance the status data?
Sure. So instead of just saying your presentation visuals were too busy, fix them, which is just surface level advice.
Right.
It's a rule. That's a rule. Instead, you use a story. You could say something like, you know, that presentation reminded me of an analyst I worked with years ago. Technically brilliant, but his slides were so cluttered, the CEO didn't hear a word he said. And that person eventually realized that clarity is the signal of confidence, and he adjusted. Your core data is strong, but we need to make sure the messenger your slides reflects that clarity.
That's so much more powerful.
It is. You don't lecture, you provide historical context. You embed the required change in a narrative of becoming better, not just following an order. The feedback becomes lived, not just heard, and it anchors that new identity so much more firmly.
So ultimately, the sources conclude that this whole approach, it transforms influence into what they call invisible power.
Invisible power.
It's not loud, it's not aggressive, it's just profoundly effective because it works with the brain's survival systems, not against them.
So what does all this mean for you, the person listening? It means mastering feedback requires you to embrace this powerful paradox. Feedback is the catalyst of profound, lasting change precisely because it doesn't demand obedience.
It bypasses conscious resistance.
It does. It operates as crucial status data, creating internal alignment instead. When you master this, influence stops being something you have to push onto people.
With rules or pressure.
Right. It becomes something people willingly step into because their own internal wiring, their survival instinct, is directing them toward that required change and that higher status.
That is just a staggering shift in perspective, moving from external correction to deep internal alignment. It really reinforces the value of treating every piece of input you give and that you receive, not as advice, but as a critical status signal. But let's leave you with one final provocative thought to carry forward from this deep dive. If changing someone else's behavior requires changing how they see themselves, by giving them precise status data, what is the single most powerful story you need to tell yourself today or tomorrow? To resolve an existing gap and permanently close one of your own most persistent unfinished loops. Something to think about. Thank you for diving deep with us. We hope this information proves to be highly valuable status data for your own evolution.